Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, children, as well as babies, and any other form of animate or inanimate life, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. I'm your host, Deven Morgan, Director of Youth Baseball, at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. And here we are, back again for another fireside chat with your guy. So first-time listeners, last-time listeners know that we start every show with a little bit of housekeeping. So we're going to try to keep the housekeeping brief. The first thing you should pay attention to is axbat.com, our good friends and partners over at Axbat. You can get 20% off from them by being a listener of this podcast using code DL20. Man, it's just a D and it's an L and it's a 2 and it's a 0. And oftentimes I try to come up with some type of like funny or amusing D and L initiated words. And just right now, I don't have the calories to give you that. So you can come up with whatever ones you want. But just know that if you want 20% off at axbat.com, what you're going to do is you're going to go add a bat or a training bat or whatever you like from Axe. And you're going to add a code D as in dog, L as in leg, 20, and that's going to get you 20% off. That goes directly to our scholarship fund, which helps us provide opportunities for kids to either do what we do with the Academy if you're either lower cost or no cost. And to recap, as we noted before, but I'll go ahead and reiterate, over the last 5 years of our program, we've given away somewhere north, and I'm probably not even actually counting this year's scholarship fund, but previous to somewhere north of like $250,000 worth of scholarship opportunities for kids to be able to do this thing for free or for less cost. So if that's an initiative that you want to support as a loyal listener to this pod, one of the ways you can do that is going to axbat.com, use code DL20, it gets you 20% off. The other stuff that we can do, and I guess I'll just like be the paid shill and try to promo the new Academy shirts. We got 3 shirts designed. We launched for spring of 2025. This one, the one that I'm wearing, the Let It Rip tee, which has the famous words of the one and only Casey Weathers on the back, along with a big old Let It Rip over it. Shout out to my guy, Jamie Kruger, a Driveline Academy coaching alum who came up with that cue, the be loose, be free, and let it rip. We also have the Warriors design, a little bit of an homage to the movie The Warriors. Again, I think that's Universal Studios. Please don't sue me. And the other one we have is a Shark Smell Blood tee, which again may have a certain shared resemblance to a movie directed by Steven Spielberg about a large angry fish. However, note that the image is modified enough that it's not the same as the poster for that movie. So again, please don't sue me. And if you do want to kind of support what we're doing with the Academy and you kind of want to just do it like passively and rep the brand, that's a great way to do it. We feel like each one of those shirts, in so much as it matters, and it sounds kind of corny, really represents something specific about the culture that we're trying to create, the initiative that we're trying to kind of stand behind, the business that we stand on in the nomenclature of the young kids. So you should definitely check those out. They're out now. We did kind of a limited first drop. We got more inventory on the way. But get them before they're gone, because once we do spring drop number 2, depending on how much time I have, or summer drop number 1, they're probably going to go away. So jump on those. And the other stuff that you can check out on is, basically training stuff that we offer here. So the Driveline Academy Snapshot, if you're local enough to a Driveline facility, or even not, because we've had a lot of people that have just flown in from all areas of the country / the world to come in for a snapshot. That is a biomechanics assessment for younger players. What's the value of that, right? Like, what's the point? And what I would offer is, think about the conventional way that we evaluate these things in youth baseball, right? We send our kids to showcases, and we hope that they pop a number that's going to impress somebody, right? Now, the reality is that, like, you can showcase at basically any age you want, right? But the thing that comes with the showcase is not a time machine. When you pay for a showcase, you're going to go and you're going to have your stuff evaluated and you're going to get some numbers. And that's kind of it. But you don't get anything that goes like, hey, this is where your number is now. This is the stuff that you need to do in order to get better. And that is one of the things that we are uniquely equipped to be able to do with the snapshot. We be able to leverage kind of the information we get from biomechanics, and we can kind of say like, hey, this is how your stuff grades out in our database relative to other players of your age. But primarily the thing that you want to kind of aim towards, again, for younger players is like, this is what competitive high school play looks like. This is what competitive college play looks like. And if you do those things, if you kind of understand the target of where you're going to, you can start to make better and smarter decisions about the things you need to do in order to get there. And that's another thing you can get out of the biomechanics, because we're going to give you like, hey, what's the lowest hanging fruit for changes that actually need to be made to your mechanics to help you, again, get better in this skills at scale kind of paradigm. The other thing you get out of that is the force plate stuff. And then what we're testing in terms of force plates is like, how do you produce not just solely on the baseball skill side, but like how do you produce in terms of athletic performance? And we can look at your athletic performance relative to our population of players from probably as young as like 7 or 8 years old, all the way up to like professional MVPs, Cy Youngs, etc. Like we have all that data in our database. We can give you some of that relevant context so that you can start to make better decisions about what your child needs to start working on in the next like 6 weeks to 6 months, right? That's the thing that we try to make really plainly understandable with the snapshot. And it's basically the only place in the world that you can get it, again, specific to the level of quality of the data that we have here at Driveline, where we've been doing this for a good long while. We work with the best athletes in the world, and we can start to be able to put this information out about youth athletes and put it in its proper context in a way that is actually actionable. That's a thing. Beyond that, hey, typical thing that I typically recommend on this pod, I have to stump for the bats that I created, the Youth Power Bat and the Youth Underload Smash Bat. The best $99 and $75 or $79 respectively that you can spend for training bats, and I'll say that with my whole entire chest. A note about pricing, as I'm sure that everybody's aware, this whole tariff thing is becoming more and more real. And it's possible that we're going to have to raise prices on things like the Power Bat and things like the Youth Underload Smash Bat. So if you want them at their current price, again, I'm not trying to fear monger you. I'm just telling you the truth that like maybe that's a thing that you want to you want to think about doing right now. And hey, one thing to think about, can I integrate these in season? Like where it's March? It's April. How do I integrate these things in season? You buy them and then you swing them. Really, that's it. Are you doing any like pregame hitting? Okay, cool. Well, one of the things you could do is do that pregame hitting with the Youth Underload Smash Bat and start to develop before the game in kind of a potentiation fashion. I'll save potentiation for a discussion at a later time. We've done it before on the pod, long-time listeners, but again, for anybody new, it's basically priming the swing. And not only are you priming the swing to be able to move the bat fast, but you're also focusing on barrel accuracy because it's a skinny barrel. Complicated concept, simple in application. Same thing with the Power Bat, right? We want kids to have consistent stimulus to overload training because it allows them to build bat speed. Bat speed is the most critical decision or the most critical ingredient that you can make aside from the swing decision for hitting performance. You have to move the bat fast in order to hit the ball hard. Good things happen when you hit the ball hard. You can do that thing more if you check out the Power Bat. I think that's housekeeping. Housekeeping done. And housekeeping done, let's get into the meat of what we're going to talk about today. I got really 3 things for you. It's not going to just be like one long-winded soliloquy this time. I got a couple topics, so let's go ahead and dig into them. And the first one, amusingly enough, is one that my darling wife sent to me, a screenshot from the old Instagram. And let me just go ahead and read this caption to you. So what it is it's just some very benign side view of a kid on the bump. I would guess maybe 9 to 10. But the caption is telling. And it says, "Unfortunately, my nervous system can't tell the difference between being attacked by a shark and my son pitching in a baseball game." And like, man, for anybody that's raising a parent in this thing, if you don't read that caption and feel seen, I applaud you. Like I really and truly applaud you. My kid's 16 now. He still pitches, and I still am able to like empathize enough with the shark attack feeling. Like I totally understand what you're saying, and I get it. Jokey jokes aside, though, like I think this is something that we can start to think about and unpack, and for us parents, probably start to understand why your child pitching a game actually isn't like a 1-to-1 with a shark attack. So, what's the thing we're worried about in a shark attack, right? What we're worried about is like, it's this imminent sense of danger. I mean, that's really the thing, right? It's an imminent sense of danger, and whether that danger portends something definitively potentially harmful for my child. I mean, that's kind of the thing. And I understand, well, I'm not saying that like I understand shark attacks, because of course I understand shark attacks. I think shark attacks are probably one of a small number of things that are like, we implicitly understand those things, right? Like, I don't need to be on the Titanic to know that a cruise ship hitting submerged ice and sinking, bad deal, right? I don't need to be attacked by a shark or be under the threat of said shark attack to be able to kind of inform my perspective adequately to know that like that's not a thing that I want to get to. But the tricky part is like we're equating shark attack with the game of baseball. And that's, I think, something that really can be unpacked a touch and understood as I adjust the volume on my mic down just a touch. I think that's the thing that we can start to understand, right? So we worry about the shark attack because we're worried about this pervasive sense of like physical danger. And that physical danger can be permanent in a variety of bad ways. Well, we know logically that that's actually not what's at stake, right? We understand that that's not what is physically at stake when we watch our kids both play baseball and then specifically when we watch them pitch. We're not under danger of permanent, lifelong, debilitating injury or death. That's not what it is. But I do understand, I think, the danger that we still feel is in the air a little bit. And I think, and look, maybe this is just me telling on myself, but it's just you, me, in an empty room, so I'm going to go ahead and just tell the truth. When I think back to my younger self and how much I felt like that danger really was in play, I think the thing that I always thought was dangerous was like, is my child going to perform in a way that pushes them forward in terms of like continuing to play the game, or does it push their desire to want to continue to put the game, let me back up and try to uninstall my dyslexia. I think the thing that we find dangerous is the possibility that if my child doesn't perform the way that they want to and at the level that they want to, that lack of performance may subtly shift their desire away from wanting to continue to play the game. And that's the thing that we actually are reacting to with this sense of dread and danger. I honestly think that that's the thing, right? Because when your kid's on the bump, they're directing the action, right? And there's a bunch of different ways that action can be directed. They can perform well in so much as that means swings and misses, strikeouts, shutting them down, bad contact, etc., right? Like that's one way that they can perform. The thing that we find treacherous is when they don't perform that way, and I think if you break it down, it kind of goes into two lanes. There's like lack of performance and then inability to perform. And I think inability to perform to me is not being able to throw competitive pitches. And I'm trying to remember. I mean, I'm not trying because I still do remember what it felt like when my kid pitched in his first actual game. This was the summer ball of after his coach pitch season. My little league had a thing where they had like a post-season chance for kids that did coach pitch that year to do in the summertime some kid pitch, right? And we went out to a field here in Seattle over in like the Finney Ridge-ish area. For anybody that's in the local area, you might know what I'm talking about, on the backside of like the Woodland Park Zoo. And there was just like a teeny tiny little dirt field not too far off from my homeboy Ian's house that used to be over on Palatine. I think his parents still live there. And I remember, D was, let me think about this, probably, I guess, 7 or 8-ish. I'd have to go back and look to try to remember the exact timeline. But he was like a teeny tiny little dude, and he wanted to pitch, right? And so he's gone through this coach pitch season, but knows that like on the other end, there's this thing, right? And there's the thing where the big boys, where they actually get on the hill and they throw strikes to, they throw or they pitch to the opposing team. And he had a real strong desire to want to do that. And it was, I'd love to tell you that I was just like cool hand Luke in it, man, but I was nervous. Like I was crazy nervous. And I think the thing that I'm nervous about in that moment is probably the same thing that, that this parent who is brave enough to like equate the shark attack with their kid pitching in a game and put that out like publicly. I mean, maybe we're just doing it for the lulz, right? Like maybe that's a thing. But I also think that, look, man, when we talk about the safety and the sanctity of our own children, like we're telling the truth, like we're telling the truth about something that's a very primal and primary emotional function as parents. We just want our kids to be safe and happy, but there's a lot of different things of what safety can mean. And I think for me, when I reflect back on that first time of watching my kid pitch in a game, and I mean, if he weighed 50 pounds, he might have weighed 500. I think he was probably like a little like 40, 43, 45 pound dude who's, 46 feet away. And, you get on like a 46 mound after you got acclimated to 60, and it just seems like you're just like right on top of the hitter. Like how is this possible? But again, reflect back on what pitching looks like for really young kids. And they have to muster like every single ounce of strength and coordination and proprioception to perform this physical task. And consider, if they can't perform that physical task, the game kind of just like dies on the vine, right? Like if you can't throw hittable pitches, if you can't pitch and initiate action, the game gets super boring super fast, right? 4-pitch walk, 4-pitch walk, 4-pitch walk, and it's brutal. And it's brutal to watch, and I think it's brutal to be on the field for. But consider the brutality multiplier for that kid that's actually like in this moment is incapable of executing this task. That is a tough spot to be in. And I think as parents, you could know a lot about baseball or you could know a little bit about baseball, but you still can emotionally intuit enough that that's a thing that can provide some amount of like negative leverage on your player's ability to stay and compete in the game. And that can feel dangerous, right? I think it can be inferred to be more dangerous sometimes for those of us who grew up playing baseball and who also coach baseball and love baseball. And baseball ends up being like integrated into the fabric of our families in a way that I think it's really unique and it's a little beautiful, my wife and I, and specifically my wife, she's talking about going back to like scoring games with a book and not just scoring on Game Changer, because again, in the high school season, both of us have found jobs because the teams need it. So like, yeah, man, I'm already going to be there. Why would I not run the scoreboard? Why would we not score the game? Why would I not set up the streaming? Why would I? Because I'm there, right? Because I'm there. So yeah, let's go ahead and do it. And she's talking about, going back to scoring games in a book. And man, if that ain't romantic, I don't know what is. And I'm not saying that I am romantically attracted to that. I love my wife regardless of whether she gives a single solitary crap about the game of baseball. What I'm saying is that I think that initiative to want to score the game at that level, to put pen to paper in this very abstract and environmentally specific way that when you score a book actually on paper, there is some romanticism to that activity. And I think the reason that we're kind of thinking about doing that, or the reason that she's thinking about doing that, is because we're trying to memorialize this very specific time in our lives where, baseball's not going to be in our family forever in this specific state. It's going to be in our family in this state for as long as one of our children is playing. It's going to be in something close to this state so long as I'm working somewhere in baseball. And I recognize and realize how lucky I am to be afforded the opportunity to do this as my job. And part of the reason is that because you guys tune in and listen to the tune of 2,000 or 3,000 people every week. So thank you. But to bring it all the way back, the thing that I'm kind of trying to land on here is when you think about your family's baseball experience, and whether that's casual or whether that's concentrated, because I'm a big alliteration guy. I don't know which side of that spectrum you're on, right? If baseball is just a thing that your kid does in the Little League season during the Little League period of time, love it. That's great. If you've got the other thing where you have a child who obsesses about the game, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in the way that, like, Mozart obsessed about the piano. I don't know what that thing is, and I don't know where that thing comes from, where as a young person you kind of just go like, that's the thing for me. I'm going to come back to this in a second. But in so much as it matters, no matter if you are one of those parents who either casual or concentrate a relationship with the game of baseball, when your child fails to perform, and specifically in the task of pitching, where like the entire spotlight is on them, it can feel dangerous when they are unable to perform, because the thing that we are actually in danger of is the time that comes when this phase of our life is over. I think the thing that we are fearing is the decision that a child might make that we probably should honor when they say, this isn't the thing for me anymore. And when you start to like roll in the family dynamics that are involved there, of course it feels dangerous, right? This is a conversation I literally had with my darling daughter about a week ago. She decided to stop playing when she was finished her 14U season, was going to move into 15U, and potentially, play in high school. And she decided to stop. And I've told that story on the pod before. I've had Cora come on, and we did a podcast episode in one of the prior podcast configurations. So if you really want to get a deep dive into the mind of a teenager to like talk through that experience, go find that episode. And not just because I think my daughter is one of the most brilliant and capable people in this entire universe. It's not like I have, rose-colored glasses or anything. She's the best. But because she was able in this podcast setting to be open and honest about like what that experience meant. But anyways, we talked about it like a week ago because we just had cause to revisit it for some reason. I think the thing that she said to me was like, she was worried that when she decided to stop playing baseball, if like she and I wouldn't have a connection anymore. And that's a real thing, right? That's a real thing. So it's understandable that there's a little bit of like this shark attack feeling on both families. I don't know that children are emotionally intelligent enough to infer that like that's what it is, but I do think that's kind of what the root of what it is. And I think as parents, we see the other side of that coin, right? You can both understand that at some time, your child is going to stop playing baseball. Inevitably. It happens to everybody, right? If Ken Griffey Jr. had to retire, well then, guess what? Everybody's going to be done with this game eventually. But what we don't want to see, I think, as parents, is you don't want to see the time of that decision get unnecessarily accelerated for lack of performance. And I think that's the thing that we're inferring danger of, right? Is it like you want to see them perform well because you want to see them continue. And I think we inherently understand on the back end that like ultimately if they don't perform, for whatever that means, that we worry that we're kind of like accelerating that timeline for how long they're going to have. And I understand why that feels dangerous. I really do. And I think we would be having the same conversation if we were talking about, if we were a nation of kids who were like competitive dart throwers. Like the dart throwing thing that they do. I think this is like an Ireland thing, and over in the UK, like they get large crowds to watch dudes throw darts. And I can't front. It's kind of electric, some of the clips that I've seen. But if this is a dart throwing podcast, right? We would be talking about the same thing about like, young kids that are throwing darts. Hey, if you really suck at that sport, you suck at that activity. I guess it's a sport. It's a sport. I hate that discussion generally. If you suck at that sport, that you're not going to persist to continue to improve, to do the things necessary. You might need to improve skill because it doesn't make you feel good. So yeah, it feels like a shark attack when your kid's pitching, because I think ultimately when you really unpack it and try to get down to the base layer, that's the thing that we're actually fearing. Now, the tricky part that I do think that we need to talk about is the fact that I'm not sure that those stakes are really in play, and let me explain why. Because again, in this screenshot that this caption came from that equated the shark attack with your kid pitching in baseball, the kid's probably at best 10 years old. Now, I've made this point before, and I suppose I'll make it again. I don't think that there is a single thing that should stop a child from continuing to play the game at 10. That can't be a thing that is allowed to be a potential outcome of youth sport participation. And I do think it is reasonable for us to look at the way that the game is constructed for children relative to their capacity to navigate some of the underlying emotional fears that they have about a lack of performance when they're like 9 and 10 years old, much more so even when they're younger, about performance. And when you start to look at how some of the other sports around the world have changed the structure of how they introduce the game to children, and they've done things like taking away the score, and they've done things like not keeping records, some of the different signals that you could send about the importance of performance at an increasingly young age. Now, the moment that I say this, I understand that there's some doofus out there, and hi, if you're listening, that you've watched the movie 300 a lot. And you think that the ideal way to raise children is tantamount to the way that you would raise warriors, right? And you think that like putting them in this kind of like hyper-accelerated kill or be kill environment is going to cultivate the type of competitiveness that you need in order to stay in this game. And what I would suggest is you keep your child-rearing Spartan fantasies to yourself in your cinematic experiences, and you don't dump that shit on children. Because I think we know enough about two things to understand that that's really not an ideal approach anymore. And number one, the first thing that I'm going to say is if all we're trying to do is acquire talent and to find out who's actually going to be the best, there are enough studies out there relative to things like Olympic sports. And again, consider the environment. If we're talking about the Olympics, we're talking about the actual competition that matters happening only once every 4 years. It's not baseball, right? At the pro level, we got 162 games a year. Well, crap, at the youth level, we got like 100 to 130 games a year, if you're one of those people. But on the Olympic side of things, there are enough studies that kind of go like, hey, if you really want like a decent cohort of Olympians, you need to start with a really wide funnel at the top, because what's inevitably going to happen is that funnel does kind of like shrink the prayer population over and over and over. So if you understand that ultimately what you want, doofus, are Spartans, right? You want baseball Spartans. You want the hardest of the hard young men and women who have this competitive fire to play this game at a high level. Then guess what? The way to make that function for when it actually matters is not to artificially constrict the funnel at the top. You idiot. What it is, you need the biggest funnel at the top, and then you kind of like naturally let it start to work its way down, but not do the other thing. That's reason number one why the Spartan approach to youth baseball development does not work. The second reason is you have to understand something that's very apparent when you look at high-level competitors. Skills Skill Complete Baseball Training Manual. Well, it's not behind me anymore, but trust me, it's back there. First couple of pages of the intro, we talk about this idea that like the reason we're focused on the skills of skill concept, and the reason that we want to have youth baseball revolve around cultivating 90-foot baseball players, and the reason that I am not promising my child or anybody else's child the ability to go on and play professional baseball just because you do this type of thing, is because of what it requires to continue to stay in this game the longer that story plays out. You're going to fail a lot. Like a lot. That failure has to be interpreted and informed in a way that it is not self-descriptive. The reason that you have to avoid that outcome about the way that failing 7 times or 8 times out of 10 can't be informative about your own sense of self is because you have to keep going. And you're not going to do that if you do not love this thing at a very, very, very deep level. And generally, most people don't love things that make them feel crappy, that make them feel terrible, that they hate to do. More people love things that are fun and things that they can engage with and things that they enjoy, right? So the 300ification, the Spartan training program for youth baseball players, that kind of seems like what we're doing when we have like cash ball tournaments for like 6U. Again, this is a thing that's happening out in the world. I am just the messenger. I didn't create these things, but I am telling you that it's happening. It seems like what we're doing is we're trying to like treat these kids like Spartans. And I will be the first and the most loudest person to tell you that what we stand for here at Driveline, what we stand for with the Academy, is not that. We need a wide funnel. And from that wide funnel, if we can train these kids on a through line that is not kill or be killed, that is not significant emotion and competition context, but is instead revolves around fun, engagement, and skill towards the stuff that actually matters, we're going to get more baseball players out of that. I guarantee you that if you give me a cohort of 100 kids and I have them for 24 months between the ages of 12 to 14, and I have sample over here, hey, we're going to run the Academy program, we're going to run the STS stuff, we are going to have it revolve around fun, engagement, and development. And you have another cohort of 100 kids, and that's run by, man, I'm trying not to curse. It is taking every bone in my body to keep this PG. By doofus over here, who's trying to like run the Spartan program for youth baseball development. I'll smoke that guy. 8 days a week, 25 hours a day, 13 months out of the year, 366 days. No shot. I will create more better baseball players than that approach. Now, you might find one diamond in the rough. You might find two. You might find a couple of like complete baseball psychopaths, and those kids are like, yeah. Hey, man, shark's going to be a shark. I can't control that part of things. But what I can guarantee you is in my cohort, I'm going to condition more love and more engagement, and that stuff is actually going to drive more compliance with the behavior that you need in order to get the most out of what God has given you. Not even a contest. And if anybody wants to engage in that contest, well, Deven at drivelinebaseball.com, 2 E's, holler at me. So again, look, the thing that I'm going to try to connect point one into point two here, right? The thing that we can understand, what we can take away from this is pretty simple. The shark attack feeling is understandable, but the thing that we really are putting at risk here is how the current moment may positively or negatively give leverage to our children's ability to continue to stay in this game. That's the thing that we actually fear. That's the thing that we're associating danger with. So if you understand that, I think as a parent or even as a coach, you're a heck of a lot better equipped to mitigate that on the back end. Because the thing that I can tell you to be true, raising 2 children who played through this entire stage up into 90 foot, and again, my daughter played her first 90-foot season at 14U and then decided to stop, and that was fine. The thing that I can tell you, though, is that I think that again, let's call a spade, man. It's just you, me, in an empty room, so I will be honest with you. I think that it is possible that there are some social issues that I couldn't adequately control that have to do with the way that like 13 to 14-year-old boys interact that had a heck of a lot more to do with my daughter's decision to stop playing than her ability to perform or not. Like that's just the truth. And I don't know that I saw those things as danger in the moment, and I think the danger I was trying to solve for as a parent, and again as the coach and the guy with the at the top of the food chain in the academy organization, that's what I was trying to solve for. I tried to solve for the skill side of things. I definitely tried to solve for the engagement side of things. I couldn't solve for like the social environment of 14-year-olds. I am a control freak, noted, and I will try to solve for all those things, but like that one just wasn't one that I could solve for, and that's okay. I think you could make the argument that my daughter ultimately deciding to stop playing baseball, realizing that deciding to do that wasn't going to change anything material about our relationship, and we still have a connection on any number of different things, that experience actually positively benefited her because it taught her something about herself. And if that thing that she learned was that I don't need to play baseball for my dad to love me the same way, honestly, man, if I had to choose between my daughter being the first female to play professional baseball and my daughter having a well-rounded and emotionally grounded sense of understanding of the love that I have for her, there's no choice. There's even a whiff of a choice. I chose emotional resolution for my child. I don't give a crap about that other thing. But the point being here that like, when you're starting to think about pre-14-year-old baseball and equating a lack of performance with negative leverage for keeping kids in the game, understand that that's not something you are just a slave to. As a coach or as a parent, you have a crap ton of tools where you can show that kid love and emotional safety regardless of their level of performance, and inform them that just like the thing that they need to do is you have to just keep playing and you have to find a way to love and also learn from the moments when you don't perform. And that's why it's not really a shark attack, right? When your child gets a bad grade on homework at school, does that feel like a shark attack? No, but probably not. I mean, I would imagine for most families, right? What it does is it exposes that we need to learn additional things. Okay, well, why can't we do that same thing with baseball? Fun fact, you can. Editor's note, you can. That is a thing that you can do. These are messages you can communicate. These are signals you can send to your children right now to let them know that, like, however they played, whether they performed the way they wanted or they didn't, you still love them. They're still emotionally safe. Let's find some learning signal that we can take away from this thing and then focus on that stuff, because that is actual, like, well, that's human development. That's not really even like baseball skill development. But I do believe, and I've said this again with my whole chest, and I'll say it again, that if kids can start to understand that behavior loop, I went out and did a thing. I got some feedback about how it went. I will use that feedback to inform the things that I work on, and I will try that thing again. That's not a baseball thing. That's a human being. That's a life thing. That's a professional development thing. That's a personal development thing, and I think that's a pretty valuable lesson, perhaps the most valuable lesson that I would want anybody to be able to learn. Related to this, Friend of the program, Robert Stock, local legend Robert Stock, if I remember correctly, had a pretty great quote in Baseball America this week. And Stock has kind of reinvented himself. Really interesting career. If you want to really dig all the way into it, I'm sure that you could look at, Kyle Bodie has been around Stock for a long time. You can listen to some of our trainers talk about Stock stuff. You listen to Robert talk about his own stuff, and he is Robert Stock 6 on Twitter. He's a really good follow. He's a really interesting dude that's going to give you a ton of perspective on the way that big leaguers think about things. Anyways, Stock had a great quote, and I'm just going to read the whole thing, and then we're going to talk about it. This quote from Robert Stock on his love for pitching is epic, is the caption. "There's nothing else waiting for me on the other side. I'm going to pitch until nobody will give me a chance, because playing baseball is the best job in the world. If you gave me $1 billion and asked what I'll do next, it would be to find out what time we have to show up to the park tomorrow. The best big leaguers aren't doing anything I can't, but they figured it out, and I haven't. The game is a puzzle, and I'm going to spend every effort I can to solve it." Now, I have been accused, justifiably so, of putting things that are perhaps too personal on the pod, as a parent mostly. So most of the time, what I try to do now is I will put forward my own thoughts and not necessarily portray anything about my kids, because that's their story to tell. But I will say, look, this is tricky because the experience that I have as a parent is very much informative of where we are now. Right now my son is in his second season at varsity as a sophomore in high school, and he is going through that part of things, and he still loves it. He still wants to get better, and he still has very lofty goals for where he wants to go in the game. And right now he pitches and he continues to be a position player. He can kind of play anywhere and pretty good off the bump. So I sent him that quote by Stock. And here's what I said in the aftermath. "I know that quote is about baseball, but I really want to underline the fact that as your parent, all I would ever want for you is to find that kind of passion about anything you choose to do. Right now that's baseball, but it doesn't always have to be baseball. It's entirely your decision. I just want you to love it authentically for you, not anybody else." So we just talked about equating the shark attack to pitching, right? I'm not trying to publicly pat myself on the back about the way that I parent, and I suppose to agree the way that I do some coach adjacent behavior with my kids. But I will say I got this wrong a lot when I was a younger parent. And the reason that I am a little bit public and forward about stuff like this now is I wish somebody could have told me when I was a younger parent that I could have thought about it differently and I could have communicated differently. And I guess I'm too dumb to not have to make mistakes most of the time to learn from them. But once I learn from them, I try to let that stuff let it burrow pretty deeply. So I'm not trying to glad hand myself over the way that I parent. I'm trying to put this stuff out there so that more parents can kind of understand that there's a way you can apply this same conversation and concept to your children. And I don't even think that it's about baseball, to be honest. That's kind of the point, right? I'm trying to tell my kid that number one, I know he doesn't want to hear this. I know, because we talk about this stuff in person, and when I kind of make that point that hey, someday baseball is going to be over, he's going to give me a face. And when I say things like, if you want to continue to play, and when baseball's over, he gives me the exact same face that I would want him to give me a face. It's kind of a, again, I'm doing everything in my power not to curse. Trying to keep this professional. It's very much like an F you dad type of thing, with like the most love that you can behind it, right? Like, because I don't have that type of adversarial relationship with my kids, but it's kind of like really, that's the face that he's making. Like, really, what he's kind of saying, and I don't know, maybe one day I'll bring him on the pod and we can confirm. What he's kind of saying is like, the truth of how far I want to go in this game. So why would you say that? Why would you say the if? Why would you say when baseball's like I'm truthfully like am I fortunate? I don't know. I guess if I'm fortunate about anything, I'm just fortunate that he has something that he loves very deeply and he's chosen to pursue it at the greatest level of excellence that he can. Like I was talking, we had a family dinner a couple weeks ago, and I kind of made the comment that I hope that it's okay for our children that we've raised them to try to do the best that they can in a way that like both things can be true. That like, number one, doing the best you can gives you the freedom to be okay with the outcome. If we're being honest that it truly was the best that you can do. I think that's one thing. On the other hand, you should try to be excellent at the things that you do. Somehow, that idea is kind of like baked into the fabric of this family that my wife and I have been fortunate enough to create. And I'm not sure why. Other than the fact that like, number one, like my wife is a G with a capital G. And she pursues excellence. And in so much as it took me more than 35 years to kind of figure out what I actually wanted to do, once I figured that out, I've tried to pursue excellence. And I feel very fortunate that we've tried to kind of communicate the paradigms of that approach to our kids. Hey, it's okay. Just do your best to be honest about whether you actually did your best. But try to be excellent at it, right? The reason we want you to do the best, you should strive for excellence. That's a thing that it's a culture that I think we've created. And again, I feel very, very fortunate about that. But the point here is that inevitably it does end. And again, it ends for everybody. We were talking the other day about like guys that debut in the majors really, really, really young. Bryce Harper's one of them. Ken Griffey Jr. is another one. And how much of like an outlier outcome that is. Those kids, I mean, Griffey's a little bit older than I am. Those guys were so good at such a young age that they got elevated to an incredible level of competition and they succeeded. And were excellent for a long, 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 long period of time. But guess what? The day inevitably came that both of them couldn't compete anymore. The game comes for everybody. Game comes for absolutely everybody. So what I'm trying to tell my kid is like, look, man, all I want you to do is be passionate about the things you pursue. I want you to try to find whatever that passion is. And once you find it, pursue it for you. Not for me, not to appease anybody else, not to make anybody else happy, not to live up to anybody else's understanding of who you're supposed to be, but like do it for you. Like let whatever that passion is be a singular expression of your humanity. Let it be that. And it's going to be what it's going to be. That's the signal that I'm trying to send. So again, to loop it all the way back to the shark attack thing, man, It's understandable where we as parents and as coaches and parents who coach, it's understandable where we conflate these two things. But I do think that once you start to unpack what's actually like the underlying issue, this kind of like this ledger that you might keep in the back of your head, positive leverage, negative leverage, positive leverage, negative leverage. 2 for 3 on the game, extra base hit, stole 2 bags, positive leverage. 2/3 of an inning, 4 walks, 1 hit, 3 earned, 1 hit batter, negative leverage. That can be very true at the high school and collegiate and professional level. It's actually definitively true the longer that you kind of stay in the game, because it's a competition job. Nobody's in major leagues just because they want it the most or because they love it the most. But what I am trying to say is that, like, for most players, you're not going to get the most performance that you can out of yourself if you don't love it. And if you're not doing it for yourself, probably not going to love it that much, inevitably, at some point. So if it's going to be the thing that you choose, understand that you're choosing it for you. And understand that, like, all this information and the signal that you're getting about what's working and what's not, you can use, you can harness it. And if that's true at high school and college and the pros, then it has to be true in youth baseball. It has to be true, because the more that we do the opposite and inform that these kids are defined by their outcomes, and we inform that they're defined by their ranking or their team ranking or any of this other god-awful nonsense that we've done to youth baseball and youth sports broadly, the more that we play out that path, the less competitive 90-foot collegiate and professional baseball players we are creating. I 100% believe that with the entirety of my soul. So do the other thing. Do the other thing. It's not a shark attack. It's not a shark attack. It's learning. And beyond that, it should be learning that you choose. And it should be learning and experiences that you can welcome. They're not going to welcome it right up the front, right? 10-year-old gets beat up in a game, can't throw strikes, etc., etc. A car ride home is not the time to try to give him this message. Now, after a milkshake, it's probably your window, right? 30 minutes to an hour afterwards, let's get something to get us away from this environment. Let's get us something that makes us feel good, and then let's have an honest conversation about the stuff that we can take and weaponize out of this experience. That's the thing. But, again, if we're in the stands sending signal to children, and they watch, do not kid yourself, they watch. If we send them signal confirming the shark attack, well, how the hell do you think they're going to act? Got to be intentional. Got to be intentional. And I am not saying that to suggest that I have a perfect track record of intentionality. No. My son was going through it last year in the summer ball season. I had to stand up and walk away. Because I, as at the time, 47-year-old man, I got frustrated. Again, I'm not trying to suggest that I am perfect, but I am trying to tell you that my intention is to weaponize the same stuff that I talk about, because these are still lessons that I need to learn and apply. So, I don't know, maybe this whole thing is performative. You tell me. I don't have that much of a grand grasp on my own psychology, so maybe that's what it is, but I'm just trying to tell you the truth as far as I can tell. So the last thing that I got for you today, and this is going to be a little new initiative we're going to do, and I need your help with it. We are going to do a thing that we are calling This Week in Pitch Counts. Okay? So last week, we talked about the presentation to USA Baseball and Major League Baseball about the universal pitch counts and universal reporting proposal. I can't give you a bunch of information about where we go next, other than to say that proposal was received positively, and we've got good conversations coming afterward. But in the current term, the thing that you can help me with, I think we need to understand what this issue looks like at scale. And principally, we need to understand what it looks like under a new set of rules. So here's what you're going to do. you are going to email me or hit me on socials, so whatever, so either at Deven Morgan or at Driveline Youth, either one of those two things, send me some horrible pitch counts. Let's do that thing, because I know that this thing is happening on a much greater scale than even I'm aware of. So I need you guys to tell me. Now, I don't care about the team because I'm not flambeing the team. I don't care about the org because, look, I'm not trying to do this to try to go like, which big org has like the most problems with pitch counts. That's not the point. The point is that this stuff is emblematic almost in youth baseball in its current configuration relative to the systems and rules that we have in place. If you want to send it to me anonymously, hit the Driveline Youth social, create a burner account, send it to the DMs. I don't care. I'm not trying to use this to point fingers at anybody. What I am trying to do is understand the incidents. So what we're going to do is every Monday, we're going to do pitch count. We're going to do this week's in pitch counts. I am going to talk about the stuff that you guys have sent me. We're going to talk about how it would go differently under a different rule set. I might even go down the R&D side to talk about how some of these acute workloads create problems chronically over time. We're going to try to take a data-driven approach to understand this, but it starts with you guys letting me know when you see bad stuff. So at the Driveline Youth socials, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, whichever one is easiest for you. You can at me on Twitter if you want to. That's fine. But when you see this stuff, let me know. And I'll give you two examples that I saw within the last week. One was a kid getting hung out for 102 in the first 7 games of a season, 102 pitch CG. It's a very, very real and valid question to ask whether the workload that is accumulated over 102 pitches I'm not going to give the exact date, in late March, whether that's appropriate relative to the workload as established. It ain't in this specific example, but like that's a thing that we saw. And I will be curious to see when that kid pitches again, because knowing the team, I doubt that he is going to be given like a full-on week to recover from that workload moving into conference play. So we'll see. What else did we see? Saw a kid throw 65, 70 some odd pitches this week and then get moved to catch. That was a thing. Saw a kid have a 42 pitch inning. Didn't even get anybody started until after pitch 30 and finished with something like, I want to say 87. Like, just asleep at the wheel. And the point of all of this is, again, to kind of hammer home on the idea that, like, it's not a coaching education issue. It's a speed limit issue, right? It is a speed limit issue. This isn't like, hey, I've gone through such and such driving school and such level of performance driving certification, so I should be able to drive 120 on the freeway. It doesn't work that way. We need guidance and we need systems. And as far as I can tell, and again, we just did a whole episode about this. If you want to, hey, Deven, what about this? Jump into last week's episode. I think it's good. But we go through kind of like the reasons we're taking the approach that we are when it comes to pitch counts, universal pitch counts, and a system for universal reporting. But it's not a parent education issues, because parents really are like have negative leverage to try to even like get coaches to treat their kids the way that they might want them to be treated. It's not a coaching education issue, because the coach's incentive is always going to be to win now and kind of do what's necessary in order to do that, because there's another crop of kids coming next year. That's just the truth. There's no publicly available record about this coach has run X amount of players to Y amount of pitch count infractions, right? That's not information that anybody has or has access to. So coaches can basically kind of presume that there's going to be a new crowd of kids next year, and unless the word gets out in a very small insular community about how somebody's abusing kids in terms of pitch count, in terms of workload, new parent that comes in, right? Hey, played 13U last year. Now I'm looking for a 14U team, or I'm going to switch organizations, move to a new city, or whatever. There's no visibility in this information. It is not transparently available. We need universal pitch counts. We need universal reporting. That's a system that I am advocating that we can build in partnership with some of these really large organizations that sit at the top of the stack, like MLB and USA Baseball. And shout out to the men and women involved in those orgs who have been receptive to this conversation. We're going to keep pushing it. But yeah, so that's what we got this week in pitch counts. Send me the stuff that you got. Send me the bad stuff. I want to see all the dirty laundry at the Driveline Youth on socials. Tag us, or you could send it just into DMs anonymously, and I will not put it out that way, but like send it to me so we can start to help everyone understand that the reason we need new systems is because of the scale of this issue. I know that it's bad. I need you guys to help me understand exactly how bad it is. So if you could do that, that'd be great. That's all I got for this particular week. What else do we got coming up? Shout out to anybody that got involved in the opening day sale for all the gear that we had. We had a bunch of stuff on sale. Moving on into season, we've got some new research stuff going on this summer that I should be able to talk about shortly to kind of understand position player throwing workload. That's going to be a thing. And again, when we start to think about this idea of universal pitch counts and universal reporting, understand that like the more that we understand, the more that we learn about everything that's involved, the more that we can kind of have this new system be informed by said learnings. This isn't just going to be like a set it and forget it thing. Yeah. The Academy shirts, I don't really have any way to show you the back, but it's pretty cool. You can go to drivelinebaseball.com, 425-523-4030, and pick up some of the new Academy merch. If you want us to make more, the best signal that you can give us is to buy the stuff that we have, and then I will go out and do more stuff. We'll do some, I don't know, I kind of have an idea for like a podcast-specific shirt for like our real hardcore podcast listeners. Jerry and Jack, I'm looking at you guys. I got an idea. So we're going to do more merch, but if you can pick up the stuff that we got now, some of it, to send that signal that like we should keep doing this thing, that'd be great. That's about all I got. So hopefully everybody else is having a wonderful start to their year in the spring, moving forward into the insanity of the summer. Wife and I just started looking at the schedule, and it's going to be a doozy. But yeah, that's all I got. I'm going to have to probably talk about, I don't know. We'll talk actually about maybe how to weaponize the showcase circuit to your advantage next year. Or next episode, not next year. I don't know. I got some thoughts. Anyways, that's about all I got. Thank you guys for joining me as per usual. Like I said, man, I'm not trying to like clap myself on the back. Hopefully this is beneficial to somebody out there. And if it is, tell me. And if it's not, I guess you can tell me that too. You can find me on socials. This is all I got. I'm Deven at Driveline. I'm down by law. Catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.